Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel Your Stars Aligned. This is your host Carmina, astrologer with Vedic principles and reader with the cards of truth. And today we have with us, besides this ginormous microphone, Vedic astrologer Levi Cosijn joining us again. Welcome back, Levi.
Hi Carmina, how are you? Thank you for having me again.
Thank you for being here. And today, Levi and I were thinking of talking a bit about Neptune, and of course its correlation to the other outer planets, to other universal principles. I think at the moment it's standing still before retrogression.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think it's going to go retrograde on the 19th of June. If we talk about the outer planets, I think we should first discuss a little bit about the outer planets and our perspectives on the outer planets, because traditionally in Vedic astrology, the outer planets are Neptune, Pluto and Uranus are not being used, right? I think one of the main reasons is because we already have Rahu and Ketu at play. And, because everything is happening through the nodes, these nodes, Rahu and Ketu, are these karmic influences, these karmic forces. So there's so much to say about the nodes. It's such a complex matter because we're talking about our subconscious mind here. As the outer planets represent the transformational forces within us, right? They are the forces that create the true breakthroughs, right? And as we look at the traditional planets as creating, the events, the concrete things in our lives, and also who we are on a fundamental level, then the outer planets would facilitate real transformation and change within our consciousness. And they're very intimately related, the outer planets and the nodes, because we're talking essentially about the same elusive, deep, it's about the deep waters of our minds and our consciousness, right? So
I totally agree, especially because you can associate these outer planets to the higher forces that are also in the Vedic pantheon. So, for instance, Uranus, the initiating force that can be associated to Brahma, and then the sustaining force associated to Neptune, which can be related to Vishnu, and the destructing force, Pluto, the purifier, which can be related to Shiva. So these are universal principles at work. Even in Cards of Truth system, we use these three principles of initiation, stabilizing, and ending and purification through jacks, which are connected to Uranus, queens that are connected to Neptune, and kings that are connected to Pluto. So I think it's very interesting how that plays out.
It's worthwhile to mention that the sun is related to Uranus, all right? This is not numerologically speaking. The sun is the first planet and Uranus is the 10th planet, right? If Rahu is the 8th, Ketu the 9th, then Uranus would be, the 10th planet, again, in the new cycle. And so we can relate the sun to Uranus, and there's, all sorts of ways. I mean, it's an interesting way of connecting those dots, right? The sun representing our souls, our light, the light of consciousness, our creative spark. And Uranus also has these connotations, right? But Uranus is a force that really breaks through the old, and all the outer planets are all about that. They're all about breaking through the old and to create the new. And so in that sense, they're the real transformational forces. And of course, they're intimately connected to the nodes, because Rahu, for example, is the path that we need to take, right? That we're the path that we need to take in order to develop properly, in order to get some better perspective about what Ketu actually does, or the narrowness by which we approach Ketu, to get insight into that, to get a perspective on it, to have to know how to deal with it, to get to know ourselves, basically. We need Rahu, we need the North Node and the placement of the North Node and the sign of the North Node, most importantly. And we need to develop that to inform ourselves about what is actually going on, who we truly are, because we are the moon. We have a, which is our individual or individualized consciousness. We have our idea of separate existence, right? We have that life spark, like that consciousness within us. It's all happening, but we have this whole Neptunian, or we have this subconscious realm, right? The unconscious.
Yes.
So we don't really know who we truly are.
I think it's very interesting how you related these more personal planets. You related the sun to Uranus, the moon to Neptune, and you find like a deeper side to them. So the Uranus is like a deeper manifestation of the individuality, and Neptune is a deeper, like the subconsciousness related to the moon, which is the individual consciousness. So I think that's very interesting.
Yes. It's the moon is the second planet, then Neptune is the 11th planet, following Uranus. We're going through life and incarnation after incarnation, depending, how you look at it, to evolve and to get a better understanding who we are truly, what is actually going on. And so the outer planets are helping facilitate, or are the facilitators in that process.
Like the outer planets are more spiritual?
They don't deal with the concrete, material, objective reality of things. They're more spiritual in the sense that they make us look at ourselves, or they are good tools to approach a deeper layer of ourselves, we could say, to kind of bring that into manifestation. I think also because Neptune is standing still, it's a good opportunity to take advantage of that, because it is a very nice aspect. It's a trine with Jupiter, which is also relating to Neptune, in fact, because Jupiter is the 5th planet. If you take Sun the 1st, Moon the 2nd, and Mars the 3rd, then the 4th would be Mercury, but let's take that as a new 3 cycle, like a new one. And Jupiter would be the 5th planet, so it's like the new 2 of the realm of things manifesting. So, of course, Jupiter is also the ruler of Pisces, and we have Neptune there. So, yes, I think
that also, sorry for interrupting, Jupiter is also in a water sign right now. It's in Scorpio. So Neptune is all about water, but like the deeper waters of the subconscious. I know that moon is related to two deities, Ambu and Varuna. Ambu is like the manifestation of water on a more earthly plane, while Varuna is more universal plane. So I could relate Varuna to Neptune, I think. You can disagree with me in the comments, but I'm going to do that right now. I think it's going to be interesting how it plays out when Jupiter moves into Sagittarius, and it's going to be in a dual sign, so aspecting Neptune, Rashi aspecting Neptune and manifesting it.
And Neptune is also a planet that it's so far off that we don't really think about it much. I think it was already an aspect for a couple of days or weeks, even before I even noticed that there was a really nice aspect going on between Jupiter and Neptune. So the moon is relating to Neptune, and the moon, of course, is our minds, and the mind is a big word. In the mind lives our opinions and our ideas. It's our individualized consciousness, right? It's our subjective self.
We talked about the luminaries, the sun and the moon, and of course, Mars would correlate to Pluto as well, being the 3rd, and numerologically as well. The 12th planet, 1 + 2 3, Mars is 3. It's interesting to see how that plays out on an individual level, also because these luminaries, Mars and the North Node Rahu, are the only avatars in Vedic astrology that were divine consciousness. So it's interesting to see the nodes, the node, like the North Node, connected to these first 3 planets as manifestation, concrete manifestation of the individual consciousness, and then extrapolate with the outer planets.
Yes, you're referring to the planets like Sun, Moon, Mars, and Rahu.
Yes.
Having more paratma,
And yes, being directly Paramatma avatars, while the other Grahas avatars started as Jiva consciousness and then evolved. And always when we talk about luminaries, we talk about nodes because they are very intricately connected. Even in mythology, you know, the Asura that drank the nectar of immortality was placed between the sun and the moon when he drank the nectar. And then they are
Sfarbanu.
yes, they are so told on him. So that's why there's enemies, but there's always this connection between.
Yes, it's so fascinating.
Yes.
You know, I think if we talk about anything in astrology, it's always related to the moon, right? I mean, the moon is the most well, all the planets
really
are important, but it's one of the most, because it's our subjective natures, it's our individualized consciousness. So
and it also creates the nodes, the lunar nodes. That's
right. It's all happening through the agency of the moon, and also our desires are there, our memories, and so Neptune relates to longing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Longing for something deeper, a deeper connection than what we know. And the moon has Ketu and Rahu, right? So we're always having Rahu and moon and Ketu and sun, right? If we look at the players within that.
Can I just say something? When you said longing about Neptune, it reminded me of the sutra of Brihadarashara Shastra when it says the moon is lovesick. So the moon also has this longing quality that Neptune has.
Has longing quality, and also Ketu.
Yes.
Ketu has this nagging feeling. It's never perfect. And then Rahu is all, about bringing up these vulnerabilities. And so it's all very intricately connected. And
yes.
Ketu representing longing towards perfection, right? And I mean, that's what it is. Like, it's never good enough with Ketu.
And Ketu, like Neptune, has this mist, this smoky, it's never clear. So it has Neptunian quality of smoke and mirrors.
Mm-hmm. It's like not be able to fulfill us on an earthly level. Yes. Like it's really pushing us into a direction, and it does it through longing. Yes. It wants to make us evolve into a more spiritual being, in the sense that a more loving being. But I think Neptune is
deeper connection to the world.
To the world, and which is inclusive, and which is the essence. I think it's reaching for something higher. Mm-hmm. And I think if we look at Pisces is all about that. It's about making connection to something that is divine, that is greater than ourselves. Dissolving boundaries. It's going beyond the rule. It's really jumping into the vast ocean. I think we're all almost starting to levitate or something, right, when we talk about Neptune. But the reality is that Saturn is there. But the thing that makes us mortal and that makes us imperfect human beings. And so we have to come to grips with that. In that sense, it's also that longing, right? That unification with something that is divine, which is clearly operating within us. We have to kind of find a way of balancing that out. Neptune in Pisces is very much about a longing to deeply connect to something. Mm-hmm. And because it is that water sign, it is that strongest Moksha. Of the Brahmin signs, right? Mm-hmm. And so it can create amazing experiences, I think, at the same time. Because the trine of Jupiter, and Jupiter has all these connotations as well of bringing understanding, and it's the guru. And I think it's important then also to look at the polarity point, which is Virgo, which is all about self-improvement. It's an earth sign, so it's all about practicality and also health, of course. And on a material level, creating more security, more stability. And by doing that, we will get hints, Mm-hmm. If you think about people who take drugs or this kind of thing, it's always a longing for getting out of this pain.
Daily rut.
Of suffering, avoiding suffering.
Yes, it's a moksha thing.
it's a moksha thing, but it has a dark side. I mean,
Yes.
I
Well,
think that's the
not
whole
all moksha is positive. Some moksha is escapism, and
yes. So it's not really liberation. It's well, it can liberate you
illusion.
like shortly from
Yes.
some
But Neptune is all
pain.
about that. It's all about illusion as well. So it's an
Mm-hmm.
illusion and breaking down the illusion at the same time. And I think it's really interesting how you talked about polarities. You talked about Virgo being the opposite of Pisces. And I think it's always good when you look at a sign to look at the opposite one as well, because there's always an axis, and opposites at their contrasts, like their furthest points begin to look similar. So I
They
think
are
in order
definitely.
to understand the sign, you have to also look at its opposite. It's kind of like the Rahu Ketu axis, like where we've been, where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
The tough trick of balancing it out.
Yeah, I think that's the way to kind of, because with Neptune and longings, we get lost so easily. And then
Yes.
if you just bring your conscience to the opposite there in the Virgo, you just realize, okay, we can find some ground here, and also ground to channel it, to channel these inspirations. It can be highly inspirational, but it can also be an escape, like you say. So I think the longing is there to union with something that is really beautiful, and ultimately it is love, right? I mean,
Yes.
I think Virgo is all about self-improvement and creating some balance in terms of finding some ground to really create something
Concrete.
into concrete,
And
and
to do
from
the
there.
hard work. Yeah, because Virgo is all about work.
And also, we are on
Mhm.
Earth. That's
Yes.
the whole point. I think the sooner we understand Saturn,
Mm-hmm.
like really, the sooner we can place that in the larger context of the nodes, of the sun, of the
Mm-hmm.
moon, and of the other planets, because it's the Saturn that is really, um,
The key, the
it's really the key
threshold.
planet, right? Yes.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
because in order, even in the cards of truth, Saturn is the energy of number 7, while the 8 and 9 are the energy of the nodes. And then the outer planets, 10, 11. I mean, the 10 is the ecliptic, 11 is the jack,
Yes.
12. And so in order to access these nodes and the outer planets, you have to get past the limitations of the 7, which is very difficult because you have to let go of behaviors and patterns and even your body
I
in
think
the
it would
end.
probably demand some, or it would require some divine grace or something. I could really get into that idea,
Mm-hmm.
because it's Saturn. It's the thing coming to grips with your mortality, like
Yes.
truly deeply,
Mm-hmm.
meaning having faced your shadow deeply,
Yes.
which is not something that you can just study
Snap your
about and then,
fingers and
and also to study about. You can learn about it and you can understand, but it's life that shows you. And then I think it's really incredible to see certain people have really accomplished some level of spirituality, which is then clear by not what they say so much, but what they are.
yes.
I think that's really amazing.
That's a very feminine quality because spirituality, I think, is very feminine. Like when you said not by what they say, but what they are. Like the feminine planet, the moon is just is. And also the feminine, the Brahmin, the moksha signs, they are all feminine. So it has this receptivity quality to it. Also Neptune in Western astrology has like a feminine quality. Well, Ketu is a neuter and Rahu is a feminine graha.
Yeah.
So I think it's very interesting. And also to touch on what you were saying earlier about the different polarities, how Pisces, like a very strong Pisces, needs Virgo to balance it out and ground it. It's interesting that both Pisces and Virgo, I feel, have a healing quality, but Virgo is more concrete healing, while Pisces is more like spiritual healing, I feel.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, I think the Pisces sign is And Neptune there, it's inviting us, I would say, because we say that these outer planets are transformations, so they work on our subconscious, right, on an unconscious level.
Okay, so Levi and I have been floating in the Neptune waters of Pisces, and now we're going to be grounding this conversation a little and just practically see what the outer planets would do to one's chart. For instance, there are some key house placements for these outer planets. Uranus's key placement is in the 10th, Neptune in the 11th, and Pluto in the 12th. So I know Pluto in the 12th makes radical changes constantly. Neptune in the 11th, I think it would relate to groups.
Like breaking through egocentric behavior and
psychological. Mm-hmm.
Yes, if we think about Aquarius, it's the water bearer, right? So it also has an emotional, becoming psychologically healthy, and becoming a humanitarian. And that's the whole thing, is that breaking through that egocentric consciousness of the moon, we could say.
We correlated Aquarius to the 11th house because it's the 11th sign. And I can see Uranus in the 10th because the 10th is all about the great deeds in the world. And Uranus is about kind of a rebirth, like you were saying in the beginning.
I think it's also important to look at the degrees of personal planets in relationship to the degrees of the outer planets. Like in case of Neptune, if Neptune is now on, I don't know, say Neptune is on 10 degrees of Pisces, and then you have a planet between 8 and 12 degrees or something, which would be very close. In that sign, it would be strongly connected to Neptune, like semi-sextile, sextile, squares, trines, etc. So when we look at natal positions, the degrees would be important, especially also the ascendant degree. Yeah.
So let me ask you something. Do you think Neptune is closely conjunct a personal planet like the sun, the moon, the soul planet in the natal chart, or if it's transiting, which one is more important, like the transit or the natal conjunction?
Well, I think the natal conjunction is important because it's going to be an overall theme for the person, and definitely, especially when it's a close conjunction, like if Pluto is, exactly on the same degree of your ascendant sign or something, that would be definitely prominent. But then, of course, we have to look at the aspects to the transiting planets, the transiting outer planets to your natal positions to see what is happening. I think it's more important if something hits with the outer planets, then look at the nodes, like, because the placement of the node, and especially the sign of the node, and the house is always the doorway to the sign, right? So the sign is deeper because it's representing that unconscious limb of Vishnu, right? So reflecting that back on what is happening to Rahu, especially. I think that's the key thing. And that seems to work really, really well. In my own personal horoscope, I've been following it for a number of years, and it's really incredible. I think we should credit Ernest Wilhelm for this, like, just 1 second, because I think he's done such an amazing job in putting this all forward, and also putting it together in a logical and inspiring way.
So I wanted to credit Ernest for developing his own version of a card system, which is Cards of Truth, and there you can see the prominence of the outer planets, how they play out. They have their own card and card placement, so they really get the importance they deserve.
Absolutely. Say that whatever Sun and Uranus are connected, it would be more prominent whenever Moon and Neptune are connected, and whenever Mars and Pluto are connected. But of course, if Neptune conjuncts your natal Venus or something, it's definitely going to play out. So that the outer planets don't create the concrete events in your life, but they are the transformational forces, the breakthroughs.
Have you noticed, like, in your practice, important transits related to Neptune, like some manifestation in some way, some behavior changes? Or
I've seen a lot. It can play out on so many levels, right? And unexpectedly. They also have this unexpected quality.
Yes.
It can be like really erratic. It can be also surprisingly calm. Also, I've seen like Neptune Mars, like making a person really tired, like the energetic system gets
Drained.
really drained. And the thing with Neptune is it's hard to put your finger on.
It's true.
It has this dissolving quality, like dissolving your desires also. Because Mars is, of course, that planet of desire also, like the hunger of Mars. And it's like Ketu's sun. It's like this inhibiting quality also of suppressing. Neptune can also have that, but it could also mean a better way of using Mars, for example. That could also happen, like what people thought of as Mars, right? I mean, in terms of exerting their energy and using their energy and their will, and transforms into something different, like a different approach, a different set of longings or desires, we could say. Like on a level of desire, it can do many things. And then also the Pluto transits, I can, had a lot of Cancer ascendants. And I'm also a Cancer ascendant. So Pluto, of course, in Capricorn there.
In the seventh.
In the seventh house,
Purifying.
it's such an amazing thing. So, but I think that the nodes and the nodes and their sign placements, it's such a deep thing. I think the way that people act and how they go about the things that happen in their lives is we should definitely look at the hour plans, because you can look at Rahu and Ketu and the aspects they make to planets and the signs they're in. But it's also good to have that extra layer of these hour plans, because they will give you a lot of insight into how people actually are evolving in those difficult processes.
And like the deeper psychological layers that you were talking about, because I think you were mentioning something about like astrologers need to study Jung.
Yes, Jung is amazing. I mean, really, he's written so much.
And he
It's
was
ridiculous.
partial to astrology, so even better for us.
Yeah, he was open to it for sure.
So would you say that people who have a Pisces ascendant, now that Neptune is in Pisces, are more affected? I mean, like subtly shifted by this Neptune in Pisces that's been going on for many years?
Yeah, with an ascendant, I think it probably, in terms of relationships, it would be important, right? I mean, going into the polarity points. In terms of their life path, like first house life path, there would have been a strong wish to
Longing.
a longing to connect to something deeper, to find deep fulfillment because it has to happen on an emotional level as well. And then by going into the seventh house, then, but more importantly, going into Virgo, going to improving themselves, also on a practical and a material level.
Yeah, of the partnerships, because that's the seven. So
the other planets, they're always very challenging, but they have like below these difficult placements or the difficult planets, and the outer planets definitely are not easy planets. There is an immense potential for growth. So I think Pisces ascendant would definitely have a serious potential for growth, and also for, at the same time, destruction or self-destruction, because the longing can be so great that it's unbearable.
Okay, so as we mentioned before, we see Neptune connected to the moon numerologically and in the way it acts, like the sustaining force. And we know that the moon has this nourishing quality, especially the waxing moon that makes things grow. And I was thinking whether Neptune has this nourishing quality, because usually we talk about, the dissolving side of it, which is more similar to the waning moon maybe. But I think there is also this aspect of nourishment that comes from bonding and connecting to the world.
Yes, I think that's interesting what you say, because the moon is all about that, like how we connect to the world. And then Neptune would be like how we connect to the divine, right? How do you do that? So it does it through creating longings that cannot be fulfilled on an earthly level, we could say. So because of that, it pushes us, and the longing is the desire gets burned. And in doing that, we create the space for something that is beyond. And that beyond, I think that is probably the most nourishing.
Rather than like immediate needs, like bodily, nourishing.
Like finding things out that you can't even communicate to the world, which would be relating to Pisces as well.
Yes, like going to being in the presence of an avatar of, a very highly spiritual person, and you can't really express your experience.
Yeah, or in any ceremonial context or something,
Yes.
people who have spiritual experiences, it's better to not talk too much because it's not, you cannot say anything about it really.
Yes.
So yes, I think Neptune is all about that. So in that sense, it's difficult to talk about, and we evade it. And it's the same with Ketu, right?
Mm-hmm. I
so
agree.
We have Pluto and Rahu are really like the the rock stars of the troublemakers. Really extroverted, and Pluto is about smashing the ego, and Neptune is about dissolving, and Ketu is about smoke, and it's more difficult to get a grasp on, I think, right?
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Well, the first and the third planet, the Sun and Mars, are kshatriyas. So that's why if we associated, Uranus and Pluto would have more this, go-getter attitude, and sandwiched in the middle is the feminine, receptive, sustaining. So yes, I understand what you're saying. I think it would be interesting for those watching to know how they would handle some important transits of outer planets, or outer planets shifting signs, which is always something important.
We have to look at the signs and what the signs represent. That's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
See, because the planets, the personal planets or traditional planets, they show us what is going on in our lives. Okay, this is happening. We have a Venus transit, so we have a relationship event and so on. And then the other planets are doing their magic behind the scenes. What is happening with us in that, like Venus is, there's a Venus transit manifesting relationships. Then we have Uranus there in the mix, for example. That would be like breaking you free from something that you've grown, right? So bringing in a new relationship, for example, with intensity, incredible intensity, for example. That would be like a really nice thing. It can also be very erratic in the sense that destabilizing, that you can't really take it, that your perspective on a certain relationship has been like this for many years, and then you were kind of forced to develop a new perspective because of that attraction, for example. So it takes you onto a whole other level, or a new ride, to develop and evolve. That could happen. So more importantly, as I think, that is the sign, that the thing that is constantly working below. Meditation is probably a good strategy to connect to these layers more, and to find meaning there, and also experiences like you never know what you're going to get some insight. I mean, like in respect to what is going on with your outer planet transits. Yeah, I think Pluto Sun. I have had clients with Pluto Sun squares, for some reason, a lot of them. That's a very difficult transit, and also Pluto on the Sun is a very difficult transit as well. Letting go of control.
The Sun is a separator. It's all about letting go. Pluto is also purifying. So they both have this purifying quality, which amplifies, I guess, when this transit happens.
Yeah, and the Sun is the planet of self. I mean,
yes.
that's the core self, and that ego.
So it's a very deep thing happening.
Yes, it's a self thing happening, and so it's much more. It can be very painful. And Mars Pluto also, like.
That sounds violent.
or yeah, violent for the ego, I think, because it wants to hold on like more aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, it does its work. I had a client with Pluto Mars square going on, and it was a deep transformational process in terms of relationships, you know, in terms of her approach to relationships. So what you put out there. So how
Exert.
choices do you want to make, and where you want to put your energy, and Pluto
Mm-hmm.
completely changing that. That would be, I think sometimes also you can feel when people go through, when the outer planets are working, especially when like Pluto's, any outer planet is working, you can also feel it energetically. It's working through people.
Mm.
Like people who have their great revelations, you can feel it energetically. Something is bursting and coming out of them, their system. And also people that are dying, just, you know, like in the last hours or the days, they seem to radiate something incredibly powerful.
I also wanted to mention the things that we are saying are important on a theoretical level, but in order for you to understand what's happening in your chart, you have to look at several layers or levels. So I encourage you to go to Levi's website and get a consultation to see accurately what is happening there, like what's transiting what. Because you can't just take one element in isolation and make your judgment on that.
Yes.
So yes, I think we covered Neptune pretty well today. It was a bit a bit
Airy.
yeah, but we tried to balance it out with Virgo aspect of saying concrete things for you guys. So I hope we made that happen. I'm curious to
I think I
know.
just want to say one more
Yes.
thing, like, and I think for me personally, like astrology, um, it's really good to have both things. Like I think the Virgo Pisces axis covers it really nicely. You have like the Mercury rules, which is all about fragmenting and decoding and following the rules, and it's an earth sign. It's really practical, and then you have the opposite Pisces, which is water, which is all about connection to the divine, to something greater that is beyond the rule, right? Which is like the vast ocean. Astrology is a tool. It's good to reflect on. It's good to think and to develop, but it also has to go beyond that. I think it's meditation and astrology really work to get well together, and I think it's the Virgo Pisces axis, because the sixth house is, Ken Rao talked about this, is very important in terms of one pointed focus, of course. I mean,
Yes.
which makes sense. And then Pisces is, of course, relating to meditation and spiritual practices, we could say, or going beyond. So I think it's important to unite those opposites and to use them both, and to get a better understanding. The more you go into meditation and go back to some more concrete intellectual stuff, it
Worldly duties.
and worldly duties, but even also theory, like the
Yes.
theory, you detach a little bit from theory and see that, okay, maybe it's just a tool. It's like a one step to something, eventually to connect you to something greater. But then coming back and to find some new theories, not one or not the other in the extremes, but finding a middle way between those and balancing those points out within us. I mean, that's how I see it for me personally.
Yeah, it's interesting how you say that, because in Gemini system of astrology, Ketu is related to astrology and mathematical knowledge, and Ketu can also be related to liberation, like Pisces. And Jupiter as well is related to astrology, and Jupiter rules Pisces. So there is something. Yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes, like this connotation that astrology, okay, it's a study, but it's meant for liberation, not just like intellectual and end of story. It's like a tool for developing something greater.
Yes.
So that's the key.
Yeah,
Yes.
to find a devotion, like it's good to devote your life to something And that is really worthwhile. And essentially it means that something that is, who knows what that is, it's I think the unknown. Eventually we need to jump into and to, even if we learn systems, I think I think is really nice about the system of astrology is that it's kind of a system that dissolves itself.
Yes.
It has that potential to dissolve itself and to and it's this constant battle between astrology and then going beyond astrology or leaving astrology, but it has to come in a natural way, not in a forced way, like now I need to get into this, and now yes, and now I need to go into this. I think it's not really, it's like both are there, it's fine, and but it has the potential to dissolve boundaries, we could say. And I think that's the whole Pisces thing, dissolving boundaries, which is terrifying for the ego. So,
yes.
Which is a terrifying thing for the ego. Yeah.
Thank you again, Levi, for being here and talking to us about Neptune today, and of course the nodes and the outer planets and all that good stuff. You can see Levi's website above here, levicosijn.com. Check it out to see what astrological services he's offering. Also, you can check out my website, which is below, yourstarsline.com. You can see what counseling services I offer, as well as future classes that I strongly encourage you to register for. Levi and I will be doing a class on the nodes next week. We're going to be doing a workshop, and we'll be looking at your charts, the participants' charts, to see how the nodes are playing out. So that's going to be really fun and interactive. And I think we're also going to be doing a class on the outer planets the week after that, and a more practical class related to Gemini and to children. So just keep your eye out for all those classes. Keep visiting my website for updates, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you want to see more content like this. And of course, share and subscribe to get the astrological message out there. Levi, would you like to say something else to our viewers?
Thank you for having me on. I would like to say something to you, is that thank you for having me on your channel. It's always wonderful. And I think it's good because we learn from each other, and it's good to, keep the ball rolling, I think, and to just talk about it, because I think also we study it. I know you study and we study, and then it's good to also talk about it. We can talk about it with clients, and also just to verbalize it and to get better understanding.
Yes, because
and
I think
to the public also, that people that give good comments. There's people been into astrology for a long time that are really giving nice comments on your YouTube channel, right, on the videos, etc. So I think it's good to keep it moving, and
it's a great space for sharing, like you're saying. And also I think both of us have like instant insights when we do these videos that we haven't thought about it before, and also we see some comment from someone that says something completely interesting and that we didn't think of. So I think it's a great like forum or like space to explore these ideas. So thank you everyone for taking part in this Neptunian experience of bonding.
Yes.
Yes.
Of longing and bonding and having nothing better to do.
I will edit that out. Okay, so I'm gonna say goodbye. Talk to you soon. Bye, Levi.
Bye, Carmina.